Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass Podcast. This for UFC Vegas 69. I'm Paul Shaughnessy. Producer Megan is on the sticks. Cody Saftic's on the line. This episode of the Dogger Pass Podcast and all episodes of the Dogger Pass Podcast are brought to you by Prize Picks. Use promo code DOP when making a new account to get a match up to $100 on your first deposit. Cody, this card sucks. We're not even going to beat around the bush. This is like the worst card I think I've ever seen on paper. That doesn't mean there's always people who are like, oh, this one will be fun. This will be, yeah, but there's really nothing going on here. There are some fights that like, sure, they'll be entertaining. I can watch any sort of, I can watch bum fights way back in the day and find that entertaining. But like in terms of like top level mixed martial arts, you're gonna be pretty hard to find it outside of the main event this week.
Yeah, it's essentially an LFA card as far as I'm concerned. You'll get a couple spots here and there that you might recognize the name. Wow, the hardcores will know everybody. But I mean, for the casual fan, you might recognize the name here or there, but it's weak. And I'm Mr. Optimistic, Paul. I come on 2 weeks ago, I tell you, it's the best Asian prospect. People are saying the card's weak, but you know what? It's a lot of good Asian talent, Southeast Asian talent. Last week, it's a pay-per-view. Do you really want to pay that much for that one fight? Maybe, but you know what? It's the best Australian, New Zealand talent, the best talent from down under. Yeah, this is just half of these guys. It's like, are they actually on the roster? And why are they on the roster? And I think you're owed a certain amount of fights per year, so the UFC just throwing something together. But yeah, I think from a main event standpoint, they're trying to promote Blanchfield, and I think getting a last-minute Andrade substitution probably actually helps the card, if anything. But Zach Pauga versus Jordan Wright is a co-main event. Paul, what world are we living in? This wouldn't co-main event a regional scene card. For a regular promotion, it would not be their co-main event. You got Josh Parisian versus Jamall Pogues. This is on the main card. Like, what world are we living in? So, again, I try to stay optimistic. Well, you know what? Weak card, but it might be entertaining, and let's make some money. What is more entertaining than making money? But even from a money line standpoint and a parlay standpoint, this card is weak. These guys are not proven. It's either guys that are over the hill or haven't proven that they're really worth anything quite yet. The money lines are minus 200, minus 300. I don't really know that I feel super comfortable from a betting perspective or that I feel very comfortable from an all-around fan points perspective, but it's like that hangover card after a pay-per-view, so it very much feels that way.
Yeah, it's like, we've said it a bunch of times on the show, it's like they've got to get out of the apex. Because it's like, they would never, back in the day where every single week it was a traveling show, they're going to every single city, they pretty much never. You know, it's happened. What was Paddy Holohan ended up like main eventing in Ireland that one time, but that was because
that was a fluke.
But that was because the main event got injured literally the day before the fights. Like that's not what was planned for that day. This is basically, a couple fights dropped off, but that always happens. But it's like they left it so thin that it's like when a couple fights dropped off, this is what you're left with. But we're done complaining. We're going to talk about...
I got one last complaint.
Okay.
Right? I don't even care who you are. Jim Miller versus Alexander Hernandez is a good fight. That's like the one fight on the card that's like anybody could get excited about. Why is this not your co-main event? Why is this not your main event? Main event I get. Andrade is a former title challenger, former champion, right? Blanchfield's the up-and-coming thing. Okay, I get that one. 5 rounds, sure. But Miller versus Hernandez just tossed on the main card of a super weak card. It's like a slap in the face to Jim Miller, who's like the most tenured guy. And Alexander Hernandez, for as many faults as he may or may not have, like, has he ever been in a bad fight? He's had bad performances, but he's ever been in a bad fight? No. He's either going to smash a guy or get smashed. So, yeah, that's my other quirk. How come that's not the co-main event? How come Zach Pauga, 0-1 in the UFC, is fighting Jordan Wright, like 1-3 in the UFC, and Jim Miller, the longest tenured guy on your goddamn roster, the longest tenured guy in the company's history, is just like a throwaway main card fight. Whatever, who cares? Like that's a slap in the face to him, I'm sure. It's a slap in the face to me as a fan, Paul.
I will correct you that Jordan Wright, it's even worse than that, buddy. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights in the UFC.
And his Contender Series fight, where he got flopped over in 30 seconds, was a no contest. Like on a marijuana no contest, too. Like a bullshit no contest saves him from another loss in the Contender Series. This is your co-main event. Jim Miller. Slap the face. That one bugs me.
Did you just drop an F-bomb? You may have to write that one down for television. Cody's getting all emotional.
I don't know if I did drop an F-bomb, but I may have. I got
you
fired.
May have. I don't want you getting in trouble with your place of work. That's all I've got to say. All right, without further ado, let's break down the card. And the main event is half decent. We've got Jessica Andrade taking on Erin Blanchfield. Andrade stepping up and in on short notice. Andrade's a minus 135 favorite. Blanchfield can be had for plus 115. This was like minus 175, minus 180. And all week, money's been pouring in, or seemingly money has been pouring in on Erin Blanchfield, which I'm kind of surprised by. I haven't bet on it yet. Interested to hear what you have to say about it, because I kind of thought it was going to end up in the direction of like minus 200 plus 170 based on, the resumes that we've seen from both of these combatants. But maybe people are spooked by Andrade coming in on short notice. I'm not entirely sure. It's a big step up in competition for Blanchfield to take on a title challenger in Jessica Andrade. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, these are one of these. It's one of these wonky main events where it's like, well, who do you think is going to win, as opposed to, are you just trying to play the line? Because when it got dropped, I'm thinking plus money Blanchfield, good plus money Blanchfield. Why not have a poke? Reasoning being, just like you said, the Andrade short notice. So Jessica Andrade coming in basically in a week's notice, but this is still a 5-round fight. So we know how good and talented she is, but a lot of her technique is very explosive, and Blanchfield's style can be very suffocating. It's the kind of thing that if you're going to fight someone for 25 minutes, you're going to have a full camp, be in good shape. And so Andrade might be able to go out and have success in the first round and a half, kind of like a JJ Aldrich did. But the longer this thing goes, Blanchfield takes her down, and that plus money, I'm willing to chase it. But now that the line's evening up, if you were to bet it right today at plus 120 Blanchfield, plus 125 Blanchfield, it certainly doesn't feel as good. Again, she was having trouble with JJ Aldrich, and the rest of her opponents in the UFC aren't any top 10 contenders, aren't top 15 contenders. She's looked good against a lot lesser of competition. The Miranda Maverick fight was probably the best she's looked, but if she doesn't get constant takedowns going, her striking is still unrefined. She's strong, but Andrade is extremely strong, if not one of the strongest girls in the division. She's going to pose her a lot of problems. So as the line tightens up, you're more swayed to over Jessica Andrade, who is a former champion, a former title challenger, and it's not like she's washed by no means. Her last fight against Lauren Murphy, she puts up like 210 significant strikes landed. For someone that does fight with that kind of reckless, explosive, high-impact style, her cardio has never really been traditionally an issue. I just think you go back to the fact that if she's getting suffocated for 25 minutes, she's going to tire. If you tire and you give up takedowns against Blanchfield, it's game over. She's going to sit in your guard. She'll pass. She'll mount. She'll just continuously work. And with Andrade, she's a fighter's fighter, but oftentimes that leaves you vulnerable to the fact that you haven't trained as hard as you could have for this spot. So the optics are, here's somebody that should smash through Blanchfield, but the realistic nature of the situation is Blanchfield's got a full camp and a good style, right? Andrade, tons of success. Lauren Murphy didn't try to take her down. Amanda Lemos wasn't trying to take her down. Cynthia Calvillo really should have pressed the issue. Didn't. Got TKO'd in one. Valentina Shevchenko, 7 takedowns, okay? And they're easy takedowns. And the longer the fight progresses, the easier the takedowns become, right? Something like that, even though she's the GOAT, it was the takedown game, and she made it look really easy. Other girls that have managed to take her down, one I found surprisingly enough, the Tisha Torres fight, she got taken down twice. Overall, she's got 73% takedown defense. She's fought at like 3 different weight classes, so take it with a grain of salt. But I'm not saying it's a vulnerability in her game, but it's something that I think Blanchfield could exploit. So gun to my head pick, because of where the line is right now as we're doing the show, I think you take the back class and you take Jessica Andrade, proven commodity, much better striker, has fought these high-level 5 rounds before, has felt the pressure, wouldn't take a fight with her resume and the current status of her career right now. She's on a roll. She would not take a fight unless it was like, yeah, I can beat this girl and I'm in shape. Current line, I take it. But for all those people that jumped on Blanchfield early money line, yeah, I get where they're coming from. Kind of wish I would have pulled the trigger a little bit earlier. A loss, it's a weak card. I want to make sure I had everything in order, and I kind of want to watch weigh-ins for this one especially. So you lost the line, unfortunately.
Yeah, I like Andrade. I think it's a big step to say, like, well, Valentina Shevchenko was able to take her down 7 times. I know that you're not saying that. I imagine that's where like the rationale comes from, but outside of Val, who is the best at 125 pounds of all time. It hasn't exactly been easy sledding for anybody to just take Jessica Andrade down. We saw her a month ago. She looked great. Lauren Murphy would be, if Lauren Murphy wasn't so damn durable, she would have got her out of there pretty early. Some people thought the fight should have been stopped as it is. I really struggle to get to Erin Blanchfield, particularly at this price. Like, this is a big step up. If she passes this test, good on her. But this line keeps moving. I'm going to be forced to jump in on Jessica Andrade. All right, we got Zach Pauga taking on Jordan Wright. Pauga is a minus 270 favorite. The Beverly Hills Ninja, Jordan Wright, can be had for plus 230. I mean, Wright just absolutely... I was heavy on the under 1.5 rounds last time out. He comes out, decides to be a wrestler all of a sudden. And but forgets the fact that it's just like, you don't have 15 minutes of cardio, bro. So you shouldn't be fighting that style of fight. Like, your style of fight, the way that you can win fights is by going out there, getting into a slugfest, trying to land an absolute heater in the first 5 minutes of the fight when you actually have gas, you actually have power. And that's how you've had some success on the regional scene and just spatters of it in the UFC. Pauga was the big favorite coming into the heavyweight finals of The Ultimate Fighter. Goes up against Mo Usman, and you kind of saw that's like size does matter. This guy, he came in at 239, but it's like he's coming in for 205 here. His frame didn't really make any sense to be at heavyweight. So, I mean, they're probably setting Pauga up for a good spot here. Jordan Wright has 5-6 minutes of cardio, usually an under machine. But Pauga I hadn't really seen as like a big-time finisher. I'll be picking, do I want to put my hard-earned dollars on Jordan Wright? No, not really. I think I'm done. I'm done with that game. It's like you're playing the lottery. Like, he can absolutely get finishes early. I'll be watching the weigh-ins really, really closely. I'll pick Pauga, but at minus 270, I am terrified. What's your take here?
Yeah, pretty much the exact same take. Jordan Wright's kind of a lost fighter. It's like, what style do I fight? Because the style that got you to the UFC was just bum rushing guys. That were generally not very good, don't get me wrong. But yeah, he's a quick starter, someone that actually does have some decent mobility for a big man, has some decent power for a big man. And if he can catch you early and surprise you, then he could put you away. Still only 31 years old. It seemed like there was a little time period there for him to develop the other areas of his game. Low key, he can actually wrestle. His offensive takedowns aren't too bad. He's a big body, but no cardio, no durability. And then here's the terrible part here. You're playing punchy kicky, man. Punchy kicky for 15 minutes potentially, and you're going to need some cardio. You're going to need some durability. As a result, it hasn't gone good for him. But similar to Terrence McKinney. Terrence McKinney comes out the gate and just bum rushes guys and smashes them, and he's like the next hot prospect. Everybody loves Terrence McKinney. That Ishmael Bonfim fight, he's 50-50, and you and I talk about it. It's like, well, yeah, but if he doesn't bum rush Bonfim and take him out within the first 3 minutes, he's going to get pieced up and get beat up. That's the real narrative here. And he goes in and he where's the flying knees? Where's the big left hand? That straight left down the pipe? Where's the blast double leg? He just sits there and he's like waiting on it, gets KO'd, afterwards jumps online and he's like, everybody in the gym, everybody in my camp, everybody around me has been telling me, well, pace yourself. He's like, so I went in there thinking, man, I need to pace myself, and should have just bum rushed him. By the way, should have bum rushed him because he got killed. Could have at least tried to make it happen. Mm-hmm. When Jordan Wright was bum rushing guys, he was that 50-50 guy you were talking about. Yeah, maybe he's able to go out there and catch you. If he doesn't catch you, it's bad news, man. It's bad news because he's not able to fight prolonged period. He hit it over his last time out, first time in a long time, first time ever, because generally, he's getting squashed. And what you can see here is like the Ike Villanueva fight. Gets on, cut stoppage, but all the same, quick start, gets on him, puts him away. The Joaquin Buckley fight, he wins the first, 3.5, 4 minutes against Joaquin Buckley. Gets caught at the end of the first round, and that's about the end for him. He gets finished early in the second. But had a good start against Joaquin Buckley. The Jamie Pickett fight, finished him, first man to finish him, 1:04. Quick finish in that fight. The Bruno Silva fight, if people remember it, Wright's putting it on him. He's putting it on Bruno pretty good. Bruno catches him with a beautiful counter and flops him. It's that Bruno fight that changes him, because at that point, I think he realizes what we already knew. He just doesn't have the durability. So he tries to now switch and say, I'm not going to bum rush guys. I'm just going to try to wrestle them down. tries to wrestle down Marc-Andre Barriault, and Barriault eventually just snacks him up in a guillotine choke because he gave him his neck. And then his last fight with Dusko, took him down in the first round, was looking good. Not a whole lot of ground and pound, not a whole lot of activity with the takedowns, but then he tired out. And then in the second round, he's just like a sitting target there to get knocked out. So, yeah, how could you bet on that guy? Zach Pauga, meanwhile, at these odds, yeah, I wouldn't like it. I'm one of the idiots that bet him last time out against Muhammad Usman, and he was a minus 275 in that spot too. No good. But the benefit of the doubt for him is that, yeah, he's a 205er. A lot of his fights in the regional scene before the Ultimate Fighter were at 205 pounds. His amateur career at 205 pounds. Can he fight a heavyweight? Sure, but he's not a heavyweight. And then on the Ultimate Fighter, I thought he was the best looking prospect in the house. Even though he wasn't a real heavyweight, 2 solid victories, looked like a much better fighter than Muhammad Usman. But here's the crazy thing. You're playing punchy kicky, man. So Usman is built like an absolute mountain, is a big, strong, physical guy. Not really known for his knockout power, by the way, but a legitimate heavyweight. I wouldn't say legitimate 265-pound heavyweight because I think he only clocks in at like 225, 230 himself, but like a big, strong, physical guy, and he catches Pauga and he knocks him out. So how much of that was Pauga shouldn't have been fighting a heavyweight? Probably a decent chunk of it. How much of it was UFC jitters and octagon nerves and all these different things? Probably a good part of it. But for a big guy, he's got excellent cardio, trains at altitude, a guy that generally comes in shape, full camp for this fight, striking enough to put pressure on Jordan Wright, eventually clip him and knock him out. If Wright wants to wrestle him, takedown defense not bad, but beyond that is that he makes you work because he's got good cardio, he's got good pace. So even if Wright gets the takedowns, it'll be similar to the Dusko fight. What does he do with the takedowns? And then eventually he gets tired of going for takedowns, and then he gets knocked out. So yeah, I probably hit the under. I don't know if I like under 1.5, but like under 2.5. And then I'm thinking Pauga clips him, Pauga puts him away, Pauga knocks him out. Pauga will be on the parlays at some point. Most of these guys are going to be at parlays. All these guys are going to be at parlays at some point. But yeah, at minus 270, it screams, let's throw him on the top. And then it's not a heavyweight fight, but it's a greasy fight, a couple big boys. Right, if he fights the way he has been fighting, he's a dead man walking. If he bum rushes him, he's got a 50-50 shot. Like, he could definitely clip him. He's got enough power to hurt Pauga. I just don't know if he's going to go out there and fight like that. So for that reason, I got to take Zach Pauga. And last thing I'll say, and then we can move on. Like last week, Tuhugov loses. Man, listen, it hurt everybody. It hurt everybody that bet him. Should we have bet him? Probably not. Minus 650, whatever. You knew it was going to be a greasy split decision. But at least I didn't have him on the top ticket. At least I didn't have him on the second ticket. He's on the third ticket, blows up, doesn't matter. The main thing is, just because you're a big favorite, you got this big number next to your name, doesn't mean you're safe. And in Pauga's case, 0-1 in the UFC, got knocked out, never been knocked out before, been hurt in a bunch of fights. I've seen him been hurt a bunch of fights in the regional scene, never been knocked out. Last fight, knocked out. Do you want to run and bet 270 on this guy? No, probably not. So anyways, all I'm saying is take it with a grain of salt, but he is the pick.
Yeah. I will say, yeah, you were talking about the under 2.5 rounds. That's juiced up to like minus 350, minus 355.
Yeah.
I mean, Pauga, it absolutely probably hits. It probably hits around 80-90% clip. So it's not like the worst parlay piece, I suppose. But like, I'm not confident that Jordan Wright has 15 minutes in him, literally against anybody, unless the pace of the fight is so slow that, you know, his opponent carries him, which that doesn't tend to play out. Probably gets to the under 1.5, but that's even juiced already to minus 175. Like, it's a terrifying fight all the way around. The books are well aware of who Jordan Wright is at this point in his career. We got Jamall Pogues taking on Josh Parisian, minus 240 for Jamall Pogues. Parisian can be had for plus 200. What's your take here, bud?
Well, it's the greasy heavyweight fight. It's an absolute greasy heavyweight fight. I don't like the line on Jamall Pogues, being that he's unproven in the UFC. It's a big spot. He's on a UFC main card, but yeah, I think he wins. With Josh Parisian, he's 265 pounds. I'm pretty sure he cuts to 265 pounds. So if he does get you down and he can get on top of you, that's where he's a bit of a problem. Like, people could on paper look at the numbers and say he's got good cardio for a big man, being that he has gone out there and thrown big numbers in the past. His fight with Parker Porter, he lands 114. It's that when you go back and you watch those fights, he's dead dog tired. His opponent's dead dog tired. And they're both slinging from the hip side. But it's very, very sloppy. Someone with a modicum of shape that's going to go out there with 15 minutes of cardio is going to be able to clip him and hurt him at some point. His wins, the Roque Martinez fight, split decision, greasy split decision. Got to get that takedown. He gets that takedown. He gets a little bit of top control. That probably seals it for him. His last fight with Alan Bodo, he got rocked, early in the first round. His striking is mechanical, you know, he throws from too far out. He doesn't move his feet. He doesn't move his head. You see him coming from a mile away. He can punch his way into the clinch, press you up against the cage and try to lean on you. He's a big guy. We can acknowledge that. But at the same time, it's like he's there to get countered in the open field, and Bodo chews him up in the open field, but he can get a few takedowns over him. Because listen, guys, he's operating at the lowest level possible in the UFC. It's possible to get takedowns at that level. Jamall Pogues is not some world beater necessarily, but what I like about him is that he's still very young, 27 years old, and it seems like a guy that wasn't a heavyweight. He wasn't, right? He's a 205er in a 6'3" frame who's young and filling it out and trying to figure it out still. But the first time he was on the Contender Series against Marcos Brigadao, comes in at 206 pounds, beats Brigadao. Not a great fight, but again, he's very young at the time. He was fighting an 11-0 Brazilian prospect, decent enough win, doesn't get the contract. Does get an LFA fight against Alex Polizzi, submitted in that one, weighed 203.8, right? So again, this is just 2020. He's weighing 203.8. Fight with Tim Hilly at LFA after he lost to Polizzi, 205.6. And then his next fight on the Contender Series, he comes in at a whopping 248 pounds. So 2 fights back, he's a light heavyweight. Guy's been competing at light heavyweight and then comes back in the Contenders for one fight at 248 pounds. They give him a walkover as far as I'm concerned. It was a walkover. And he looked good. His ground game's pretty all right. His pace is pretty all right. I think he's got decent enough cardio. Work in progress, but someone that I can see putting it together. Not going to challenge in the top 10. Not going to break over to an elite heavyweight status. But over a guy like Josh Parisian, he's faster than him. Probably got better wrestling. If he just trips him up, takes him down, he's going to have a lot of success. If he keeps it standing in the open field, he's just going to be able to beat him with a punch routinely. The thing is that this is quite a big line for a guy making his debut, who's not an actual heavyweight, fighting a guy whose pretty much only good characteristic is that he is a bona fide heavyweight. On a greasy heavyweight spot, you know how I feel. You feel the same way about these middling heavyweight type spots. It's just a lot. I think he wins. But again, it's a confidence issue. It's like, how much confidence do you have in him to go out there and beat Parisian? Or is it not possible that you see this week in and week out, he goes out there and looks really good for the first round, and then all of a sudden, throwing around a guy of this size, gasses him out a little bit, and then Parisian can kind of get into his area. If Parisian trips him up and ends up on top, it's a big body to move off of you, right? So now all of a sudden you're tired. It's 1-1 going into the third. He's got experience. He's fought here before. He knows what he's got to do in this third round because he's been there. And with Pogues, not saying he hasn't seen a third round before, but as a heavyweight in a UFC debut in a small little apex where Dana might be sitting right there, like, I don't know, it's just a long line. It's a long line. I know I'm talking a lot of narrative here for sure, but these are the kind of things that at the end of the night when you're like, what did I bet that guy? It's like, well, you knew about all this stuff. So why did you bet the guy? You knew about the stuff going in. It's going to be greasier than it needs to be. Or maybe just pass or put it lower.
No. I agree with a lot of what you were saying. Just how quickly just to add, like, I think the Parisian wrestling narrative is a little bit overblown here. Guy's taken down twice by Parker Porter. Not a wrestler. Like, not really a wrestler whatsoever. Don'Tale Mays. That was when he got the nickname D1 Don'Tale. Not really a wrestler. Had no problem taking him down at will, over and over and over in that fight, and then finished him in the third round. I mean, the win over Alan Baudot, round one, he got knocked down. It was looking horrible for him. He was about to lose to the worst heavyweight on the UFC roster, another guy who was a 205er fighting at 260 or fighting at heavyweight. So I don't like laying, low-level heavyweights. I don't like laying minus 240. I probably won't lay minus 240 here. I will be picking Pogues because really, outside of, holding him up against the cage, using a little bit of size advantage, like he's probably going to have about 20 pounds, 25 pounds on fight night over him. Pogues came in at 248 last time on the Contender Series. Should have a speed advantage. Probably a technical striking advantage, cardio advantage. You know me, I love betting underdogs and dumb little spots like this, but I cannot get on board playing Josh Parisian. Moving on down the card, we got William Knight taking on Marcin Prachnio. This fight was actually, Prachnio was a slight favorite. Money is coming in on thick Willie Knight. I suppose people are thinking that, the reemergence of Prachnio's chin issues that we had seen in the past are going to show up in this spot. I really struggle getting to William Knight. I have backed him in a bunch of fights, and honestly, the volume's just not really there. I'm not sure about his grappling. I'm not sure he really belongs in the UFC at this point. Can he land an absolute bomb and win? But I actually think more often than not, Prachnio should, as long as he can stay upright and keep this fight striking at range, he should box him right up, out volume, and win this. It's really a kind of knockout or bust for William Knight. Maybe he can wrestle a little bit, but I haven't been too impressed by what I've seen from him in the wrestling department in too many of the spots. At least he's able to hold guys down, or he's able to take them down sometimes, with sheer grit, muscle, determination. He hasn't been able to really hold them down and get too much damage from top control. So I'll take the ever so slight dog in Marcin Prachnio. Just, keep your chin in one piece. He's definitely, he had that reputation at the beginning when he first came onto the scene, but I think he's fixed his strategy up a little bit here. So not sure if I'm going to bet it, but I am picking Marcin Prachnio. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to pick Prachnio as well. Similar to the last fight with Jaamal Pogues, because of the weight, I'd really like to see the weigh-ins before I went in and locked anything. And it's the same thing with William Knight. So when I talk about lost fighters, it's like, oh, man, maybe I should change a weight class because things aren't going good in this weight class. Or Terrence McKinney, change your style, right? A Jordan Wright, try to change your style because you're looking for what's going to bring me success. The weight class change is a big one. And William Knight, I think that's exactly what he did. They call him Thick Willie for a reason. Even though he's not very tall, he's pretty much built as big as you can get at 205 pounds. And he starts coming out stagnant. If you just look back to 2021, he's on a roll. Beats Fabio Charant, big shot. Looked terrible in that fight. Is looking away with his eyes closed and just kind of pause him, completely renders him unconscious. Because when you're built like that and you touch people, they go to sleep. This fight with Alonzo Menafield, again, I thought he looked good. He's not exactly a great striker. He's not a great wrestler. But being that physically strong, that muscular, he has a lot of success pinning guys up against the cage, outmaneuvering them in the clinch, working them over ever so slightly, getting the win. That's him at his best. That's him when he's making weight properly. His fight with Max Christian, he was depleted. Bad weight cut. He came in at 218 pounds for a 205-pound fight with Max Christian, okay? So most commissions wouldn't actually allow that. You can't fight if there's a 7-pound difference. In this case, it's like, Christian, would you fight him? Christian's Russian, so he says, nah, and he's in. But also you see a dead man there. He does not look good. It looks awful. The performance, 3 takedowns for Willie Knight. But like you said, can't hold him down, doesn't have the cardio, no striking. And then when Christian does get back up in the spots where Christian's standing, he just chews him up. Dead man walking, is such a good range game over Willie Knight. Willie Knight's ineffective with his counters, looks uncomfortable. Christian beats him up. It's the weight cut, right? So the very next fight with Devin Clark, he clocks in at 251 pounds. So here's a guy that's kind of okay-ish at 205. Just blows up to 218 for this fight at 205, okay? So his days at light heavyweight are looking behind him. He now comes out at heavyweight and weighs 251 pounds, Paul. So he's all the way a heavyweight. He's full-blown heavyweight at this point. And he looks awful. He did technically on the numbers manage up one takedown by Devin Clark, but not a nice takedown. Clark quickly back up. Clark puts the pace on him. Clark wears him down, and Clark knocks him out, right? So Devin Clark, not a terrible fighter, as we saw from a couple of weeks back, but again, William Knight as a heavyweight fighting a dude that used to fight at 185 pounds and getting tossed around in there, he's not what he used to be. So even the sheer perspective and the sheer idea of he's fighting this weekend at 205 pounds, can't wrap my head around it. Last time you seen him try to make 205, he botched it by 13 pounds. And then the last time he fought, he's at 251. Now he needs to cut 45 pounds to get back down to 205. People will say, well, if he does, then he's committed and he's this and that. He's 34 years old. It's not going to be good on the body. It's not going to be on the reflexes. And the part of the reason why he left light heavyweight is because it was zapping his body. So because you realize now, oh, shit, I'm not a heavyweight. I just got dummied by a former middleweight 205er. Who else at heavyweight is there for me to fight? Okay, well, I better get down to 205. Not a simple fix. Marcin Prachnio, meanwhile, if anything, he's got the volume. You saw that in the Khalil Roundtree fight. Survived that first round. Second and the third round, he's able to put some volume on him. The Ike Villanueva fight, much of the same. A guy that, as his best, can put some volume on. Even in his last couple fights, the Philipe Lins fight, his last time out, he outstruck Philipe Lins, 74-64. Thing is he's giving up the 4 takedowns. He gave up, 5.5 minutes of top control or control time in that fight. So is there a path to win for William Knight? Of course. Get your wrestling going. Take him down. Hold him down. Get that round time. But very similar to his fight with Christian, he might get those takedowns, but he's not going to do enough with them, and he's not going to do it for a sustained amount of time. Whereas Prachnio's got enough cardio that once he gets back up, he's going to rack up a few numbers. You know those fights where it's like, damn, my guy's been on top for 4 minutes, and then all of a sudden there's a scramble, and there's 58 seconds on the round, 48 seconds on the round, and the guy bum rushes you, and you know, shit, I think I just lost that round. Even though you had the 4 minutes of top control, you didn't do anything. This guy lands a couple hot shots near the end of the round. Judges tend to favor it. Prachnio, I think, does that. So it's pretty much an even money fight. But like ever so slightly, Marcin Prachnio is technically the betting underdog. And so Dogger Pass, baby, sign me up with Marcin Prachnio.
All right, we got Alexander the Great. Hernandez taking on Jim Miller. Minus 220 for Hernandez, plus 190 for Jim Miller. You know me. I made the mistake last time out of backing Hernandez at 145. I waited till the weigh-ins, and I'm like, man, he made 145, made it look pretty easy. Maybe this guy's figured it out. We've always known that he's got lots of talent, knocking out Beneil Dariush. Looking back on that performance now, it's like, it feels like it's a totally different person. This guy is so dangerous in round 1, but he has been finished in round 2 by Drew Dober, Renato Moicano, Billy Quarantillo last time out, Donald Cowboy Cerrone. It's got about 6-7 minutes of cardio. Nothing's really changed on that front. Jim Miller was supposed to be on this card already, and he was taking on our guy, Gabriel Mowgli Benitez. Hernandez coming in on short notice, after going to 145, flopping, wants to take a quick turnaround fight against Jim Miller. It's like, if Miller is living after the first 5 minutes, great live entry spot. I'll probably sprinkle a little bit on Jim Miller round 2. Not that Jim Miller has the best cardio. We have seen many a times with Jim Miller that he's a little bit, he definitely slows down over the course of the fight. But, like, there's levels to cardio dumps. And I don't know if I've ever seen anybody like Alexander Hernandez who looks so good. He looks like a title challenger in round 2, and he looks like one of the worst guys on the roster in looks like a title challenger in round 1, and then in round 2, and if he even gets to round 3, he looks like one of the worst guys on the roster. Like, it's a tale as old as time at this point. Don't want to dump on the Jim Miller money line this early in the week, because I can totally see Hernandez landing a big bomb, getting him out of there early, like totally in play. So I'll probably just sprinkle, Miller round 2, a little sprinkle of that, and more of a fight that I'm much more interested in betting from a live betting perspective. But Miller will be my pick. What about you?
Yeah, I think maybe even just go for the under on that one. If Hernandez shows up, you know what he's capable of doing. You mentioned the Beneil Dariush fight, and then to a so much lesser extent, his last 2 wins in the UFC, Chris Grutzmacher and Mike Breeden. When he touches you early, he can put you away. He does have that capability. When he does not knock you out early, he tends to absolutely fall apart and then get finished. As you mentioned, the second round, he starts to fall apart. Jim Miller, his last 3 fights, all wins, all second round finishes, right? Submissions, knockouts. He has a way of hanging around the fight just long enough to catch you with something. And Hernandez is one of these guys that tends to, if he doesn't finish quick enough, he's in the fight long enough to get caught from something. They're very self-destructive. We're going to talk about Jamall Emmers later on, to a lesser extent, because Emmers is the king of the self-destruction. But the guys are talented. They have all the talent in the world. Maybe it's a mental lapse. God knows what it is really. But at some point, they make crucial mistakes. And their opponents generally always capitalize on those crucial mistakes. So I actually do like Alexander Hernandez. I think he's very athletic. I think he can wrestle. I think he's got big power. He's a confidence-driven fighter. So when you take that confidence away from him, he's not the same guy. When he's not talking down to you, when he doesn't think he's going to smash you in his head, there's self-doubt. But when there's self-doubt, then he kind of pulls his punches a second. When he pulls his punches a second, he's done. He's going to fall apart. That being said, his losses, Renato Moicano, Billy Q, Thiago Moises, Drew Dober, all those guys beat Jim Miller. So this is going to be a step down in competition for him. Mm-hmm. It's something that he should be able to at least go there and have some success. My narrative on this one is that it's better for him not to have the camp. If you see the kid get on the scale in every fight, he's chiseled out of marble. Like, he's absolutely jacked. No doubt about it. Alexander Hernandez don't hang on the couch between fights. So he's in great shape. So even though a guy that's that ripped up and ready to go has such poor cardio, because I think it's more so the nerves, it's the jitters, it's the confidence, it's the overthinking. So when you have an 8-week camp, 10-week camp, 12-week camp, you're thinking about the same guy for that entire time. You're losing sleep over it. You're stressing over it. You're overanalyzing all of his moves. You're seeing some highlight reel. You're seeing some training video he posted. It's getting in your head. It really messes up with the guy. In this instant, he's coming in short notice. Like, he hasn't stressed anything. You know, he's in shape. He's helping out coaching at Factory X Muay Thai. He's surrounded by great bodies, great training partners, and he's jumping in here. Doesn't have to cut down to 45. I think he's probably going to go out and show off a decent performance. Thing is, and I sound like a broken record at this point, he's lying. The line is no good, and he is massively untrustworthy. Jim Miller is always the dog. How many straight fights has Jim Miller been the underdog now in?
Well, he's had a couple bums, but I understand your point.
So his last fight against Donald Cowboy Cerrone, he's a minus 190 because Cerrone was partying in Thailand. The fight with Nicholas Moda, plus 150. Paul Cash a taste, he won on that one. His fight with Aaron Gonzalez is a mega bum, but he finished him inside the distance. I think that's what people expected, right? He was competitive against Joe Selecki. He was competitive against Vince Pichel. Cash against Roosevelt Roberts at plus 205. Clashed against Clay Guida. I guess he was a favorite in that one. So it's like, yeah, these are spots that he's used to, right? He's got enough firepower to clip him and put him away. He's got enough submission game to catch him with something, especially in transition. He was able to get his respect early and hurt him. But yeah, I got to go based on tape and skill. And I would say Hernandez is just a better athlete. He moves better. He hits harder. He is a better athletic fighter. Jim Miller is a better fighter. But 39 years old, Lyme disease. How many times has Cody Saftic got to bring this up for you, Paul Shaughnessy? At some point, the train is going to fall off the tracks, and I just don't love betting him in spots. So of all the dogs we've talked about on the card to this point, Jim Miller's your guy, for sure. And if you're a Jim Miller bettor, you ride or die with him. You're up money, right? These are the spots he thrives in. He's very live here. Gun to my head from the fights that we've talked about. Got to take one actual underdog because we got an underdog in our last spot, but it's not really Marcin Prachnio, not really an underdog. No. Look, one legit underdog. Yeah. I would say Jim Miller, but don't got the Tonys. I can't bet Jim Miller. He's your guy, not my guy. What I will offer you though, if you have any interest, is if you want to take a shoey bet. We're 6 weeks into the year. No shoey's been done on the show. No shoey bet's been issued on the show. Jim Miller is your guy.
Oh, come on. I'm not taking.
Would you take a shoey bet?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, it's not like I got a world beater here, but I see what you're saying.
I understand the risks involved here. I'm not giving you a minus 200. Jim Miller could totally get knocked out in the first round. That's fair. I'm not even touching the money line because I think this fight has to play out a certain way for Jim Miller to get the nod. Like, he's giving up size, strength, speed, athleticism, age to a younger, much more, dominant, dangerous athlete in Alexander Hernandez. But we get out of round one, it's game on. So yeah, I'm going to sprinkle the round 2 prop for Jim Miller and be more interested in entering from a live market perspective, because if he's living after round 1, it's Miller time. But yeah, and on top of that, he was favored against Mata and Eric Gonzalez. Gonzalez was that one didn't really make any sense. I think they were just trying to get, the company man Jim Miller back on track. That's why he's a minus 250 favorite. And then Mata, I think that one closed at minus 120, plus 100. So he closed as the favorite. But I got it early in the week at plus 140 or something like that. So yeah, Jim Miller has more wins than anybody on the roster, and the guy just never gets any respect from the books. And he's had a whole bunch of losses. He's had a whole bunch of wins. It's crazy how often this guy fights. He's really a company man. All right, we got Mayra Bueno Silva taking on Lina Lansberg. Bueno Silva is a minus 500 favorite. Lina Lansberg can be had for plus 375. Most interesting part of this fight, Cody, is the over-under, in my opinion. I think it's playable here. It's like fight goes to decision is like minus 125 across the market. I haven't touched it yet, but like Lansberg, if nothing else, she's very slow plotting, but she's been very durable. Outside of Aspen Lab was able to get her out of there in round 2, and another previous fight that escapes me off the top of my head right now that she got finished against like elite competition, but
Cyborg,
yeah, Cyborg was able to finish her. That was it. Yeah, I'm surprised that I guess Mayra Bueno Silva's coming off of a first round submission win against Stephanie Egger, but I don't know. I mean, I think I'm gonna be picking Mayra Bueno Silva. Lansberg is kind of like a sitting duck. She doesn't really a lot of standing cage control. The striking's not quite there. She's a little bit long in the tooth. It's really, really hard to back her, in my humble opinion. But I think there is an opportunity to make some money on fight goes to decision between the two of them. I think that first round finish that Silva got last time out against Egger is really, really cooked into this line. So that's where I'm going to be going with it. I'll be picking Mayra Bueno Silva as my pick, but minus 500 doesn't really get me out of bed. What about you?
Yeah, so I think she's the pick. She's minus 500. No shocker here, but this could be your apple pie shitter. Absolutely. I think Mayra Bueno Silva wins, but at minus 500, I don't feel great about it. And there's certain issues that I do have pertaining to this matchup. So Mayra Bueno Silva is super slow. She's very, very, very slow and plotting. That's the reason why she can't beat a Manil Fiorot or a Marina Moroz, is that if you stay to the outside and you just use your striking, she's just very slow to get a hold of her opponent. Her best attribute seems to be the armbar. She's got a nasty armbar. Thing is, she's got no wrestling to back it up. She's got career takedown accuracy of 0% in the UFC. She has never completed a takedown in the UFC. Stephanie Egger got submitted because she's the one that took her down. That Wu Yanan went the distance with her just 2 fights back and took her down and avoided the armbar. But Wu Yanan can't strike, so she's out striking her. But the 0 takedowns is concerning because the best part of her game is going to be if she just takes Lina Lansberg down and sets up on top, has some decent submissions. Why not try to submit her? So that off the table, you've got a striking battle, which is fair. But Mayra Bueno Silva, again, she's slow, she's plotting, and she's going to use predominantly a shoot-to-box boxing style, whereas Lina Lansberg is effective in the clinch, likes to use knees, likes to use elbows, likes to use those small, more short attacks. But at 40 years old, she don't got the cardio to keep pace. Like, you would think Mayra Bueno Silva at some point is just going to keep throwing, and that's what's kind of getting Lansberg in trouble, is that she's not fighting girls that are necessarily big on power, but they're big on volume, and the Carol Rosas of the world, they're just going to keep chipping away. She looked good in that fight. I was all in on Carol Rosa. I didn't feel particularly great about it. Definitely won the fight, but just not as easy as it should have been. Lansberg's not a terrible fighter. She's fought in really good competition. You need to outwork her. But being able to beat her in the clinch, press her up against the cage, mix in some takedowns, that's what would make you a minus 500. 0% takedown accuracy is concerning. Wins over Wu Yanan, Mara Romero Barella. I guess the Jillian Robertson one was okay. Aged well. It's just like she's not elite by any stretch. You can say that her losses are elite, which they are. All the props to Marina Moroz and Moro Fiorot. I mean, she's lost to good girls, but these are the kind of spots that Pat Mayo ends up plus money at the end of the year, because it doesn't make any sense when he just randomly, no explanation, takes the big plus money dog in these exact spots. But it's like it's going to be closer than the minus 500 indicates. And then you yourself, great point, probably goes to decision. Lansberg's extremely durable, generally goes to decision. Bueno Silva just went to decision with Wu Yanan 2 fights ago. Can't stress that enough. This thing could very well go to decision. So if it's going to go to decision and grappling's off the table because she's not taking her down, so it's mostly a striking battle. So you've got a striking battle for 15 minutes in women's MMA, and you're holding a minus 500 ticket on somebody. Feels like Tuhugov from last week. Like, you probably win. You should win. But all it takes is 2 bad judges and you're on the wrong end of a split decision, and you paid a whole lot of chalk. So that's kind of my takeaway on this one.
All right, moving on down, we've got Khusein Askahabov taking on Jamall Emmers, minus 130 for Askahabov, plus 110 for Emmers. Who you got here?
Well, I mean, it looks like Askahabov is the way to go, but that's just looking at this 23-0 record, which is massively ballooned up. He's got guys on here that were like 0-20. He's had not fixed match allegations, but they've physically pulled fights off of his record being like, come on, dude, this is not a real fight. Again, when you look at some of them, they'll have okay looking records. Oh, geez, 7-1, 6-2, 7-2, all good looking records. And it's super salty when you look into those guys. So it's hard to gauge like what you're getting out of him. He has not had a fight in 3 years. Okay. So almost 3 years to the day, like a month short of 3 years to the day is the last time he fought. I don't know that you can get a great read on him. He's still only 28. I would say he's a beast. I would say the guy's got combat sambo in his back pocket. He's got a wrestling advantage. He's got some good striking. He's able to fight for 15 minutes. But when you look at the fights from 3 years ago, he's got some massive holes in his game is what he's got. Jamall Emmers has a wrestling advantage over him. Jamall Emmers appears to have a speed advantage over him. Jamall Emmers appears to have potentially a striking advantage over him. Well, it's like Jamall Emmers just puts himself in really bad spots, like the Giga Chikadze fight. Could have won that fight. No doubt could have beaten him had he decided to wrestle, which for whatever reason, he just decided to wrestle too late into the rounds. I thought he could have still won that fight. I mean, I scored it for him, but the judges unfortunately didn't. Would have been a marquee victory for him. His last time out with Pat Sabatini, he rocks Pat Sabatini early, decides he's going to roll, play leg locks, the leg lock guy. It's bad decision making. But you do look at the skill. It's like, yeah, he moves really well. He's got good wrestling, solid athleticism, hits pretty good striking from the outside. I think he's the kind of guy that could go in there and give Askahabov a whole lot of problems from the outside. Uses wrestling to keep the fight standing, maybe even mix in a couple takedowns. Guy's been off for 3 years. What's his cardio look like? What's the ring rust going to look like? Or is he going to come back and be like an absolute dominant world beater? Last time you seen him 25, now he's 28. Could be. Very hard to get a read on that. I want to just take the Russian Khusein Askahabov. Thing with Askahabov, though, is I think which feels like a trap. Like he's a 23-0 Russian. Obviously, you're going to take him. And when you look at the tape, you're not very impressed, but you just keep telling yourself he's an OV Russian and he's 23-0 and the UFC's setting him up and he's still young. And you keep telling yourself this stuff. And Jaamal Emmers is an apple pie shitter, but it's like Emmers has fought at a higher level. He's given a better account of himself. He looks to have some skill advantage. He's been off a while too, capable of maybe coming back as a reinvented version. Going to give him problems. And then I know this is going to sound like the coward's way out, but I need some underdogs. Fact is, I need some underdogs. This is not even a big underdog spot. It's not. But it technically is, right? And Jaamal Emmers would be that guy that I think is going to pull out an underdog win. Yeah,
I'll side with you. I watched tape and looked at the record, and I'm like, oh, Russian that, is 23-0. I expect to be impressed. But I was like, what is going on with this line? And why are people taking Emmers? And why does it keep getting tighter? And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, he's fighting like a bunch of cab drivers. Like, this is not... I mean, they're not actually fighting like cab drivers. But, like, I really didn't see all that much on tape that was, like, impressive. I saw somebody who was incredibly green for a 23-0 record. I don't think I'm going to bet it, but I'll pick Emmers with you. We got Philipe Lins taking on OSP. Lin's a minus 200 favorite. OSP can be had for plus 170. A penny for your thoughts.
Yeah, I think you got to go with Philipe Lins here. The line currently minus 205 again. It's one of those spots you're going to say you don't like. But I think you got to force yourself to like it. Like, you're going to have to bet a few of these fights on the card if you want to force it. You're degenerate. You want to force it. We're going to need a few of them. And I feel like Lins could be one of the better spots. OSP, at his best, excellent fighter. Former title challenger, and was kind of a flaky spot, but he went the distance with John Jones. He's fought all the best guys in the world. He was a good fighter, right? A former football player out of the University of Knoxville, athletic guy, some decent power, went on a good run, has this kind of style where he can lull you to sleep and then knock you out, and then also has like an advanced ground game where he slaps on so many Von Flue chokes that they physically change the name of the submission to Von Preux, because it's basically his move at this point. So again, there's a lot that you could like about an OSP, but you're going to have to bear with me on this one because it's basically just like story time stuff. But when he fought Dominic Reyes, right? So a buddy of mine hit me up and was like, he's really struggling physically. Like, his body's starting to shut down. He's got 40 pro fights when he fought Dominic Reyes, who was 9-0. And the fight was, he got beat up for the better part of the 3 rounds. And then with like 1 second left on the clock, he got absolutely knocked out. Now, the round ended, so it didn't go down as a knockout loss on his record, but it seriously took some stung out of him. His next fight against Nikita Krylov, he gets submitted. That one was a rematch. That one was a rematch. He Von Preu'd him the first time. Second time, just doesn't look like the same guy. Gets beat up, tired, taken down, rear naked choked by Krylov. Fair. fight with Lexichuk. Get 10-8 in the first round. 10-8 round in the first round. Second round, well, Prince Michael gassed. As soon as when Lord Michael gassed, it was like, okay, OSP fights his way back into it, hits him with the Von Preux choke. Fair. He's still a veteran. He's still got a few moves, but his ability to move is gone. He's got a leg injury, and he just doesn't move on his feet anymore, right? So now he moves to heavyweight against Ben Rothwell. Why would you do that? A, having weight cutting problems, having physical problems, and the speed is just catching up to him. So he goes to heavyweight to try to catch up one of these slower guys. The Rothwell fight is one of the worst fights you'll ever see. It's a split decision because he drops Rothwell twice. But outside of him dropping Rothwell twice, it's him doing nothing. He just stood there. He didn't have no cardio. He looked physically massively ballooned up at heavyweight. He came in at 240 pounds, not huge, but considering he's a 205er, bad news, right? Comes back down, fights Alonzo Menafield. Menafield looked terrible. And then his last two fights, he fights Jamall Hill, okay? So you'll give him a pass because it's the current champion. You'll give him a pass all day long. Here's the thing you got to keep in mind. First time in a 45-fight career that he missed weight. Comes in at 207.5. Never missed weight before in his entire career. Coach goes on record. Now, he's had weight-cutting issues dating back to 2018, but now he's officially missed weight against Jamall Hill. So his coach comes out on record and says, I'm the one that told him stop cutting weight because I know my athlete and I could tell something's wrong with him. They still let him fight the next day. They still let him get knocked out in brutal fashion by Jamall Hill, but he officially missed weight. So 205 is now off the table. It's not there for him anymore. Fights Tanner Boser at heavyweight. Fair. 230. Looks like crap. Gets knocked out by Tanner Boser. Bad performance. And then the UFC decides, you know what, let's just run back that Shogun fight. You knocked him out in Brazil in 30 seconds. Nobody cares to see this rematch, but Shogun's looking for a way out. You basically at this level now, and they booked the Shogun fight. He should have killed Shogun. He was a minus 270 favorite over Shogun. Is one of the worst performances you've ever seen. And part of that's the weight cut. Can't make this weight no more. Massive leg injury. No mobility. He can maybe catch you with that like swinging left hook, but the speed's gone. I'm not saying the power is gone, but like he's not OSP anymore. Fan favorite in my heart. Love the guy. Very nice career. Not great career, nice career. But his days of being any slightly bit relevant, they're gone. They're gone. I seen that he took this Andre Petrosky grappling match. I watched it. Again, he looks ballooned up. He looks slow. He gets taken down and controlled by Andre Petrosky. He doesn't get submitted, so I'll give him that. But like he just didn't look good to me. Now, Philipe Lins, who knows what he's going to look like himself because the guy's been out so many cancellations and injuries. And when he does show up, he doesn't look great. But he's leaps and bounds a better technical striker. And I think he's just going to stand to the outside and just dance around OSP, land kicks, land punches, out-volume him, not get caught by that big shot, wrestling advantage. I just think like Lins has maybe got something left in the tank. He's 37, but he's got less than 20 pro fights. Whereas OSP has got 40 pro fights, 40 plus pro fights. His body is what's broken down to me. So I got to see weigh-ins simply because it's a heavyweight or it's a light heavyweight fight. OSP's got to make light heavyweight, which I think is going to be a task in itself. And then even for Philipe Lins, it's like, I don't want to bet this guy. He lost to Andre Arlovsky. He had heavyweight. Well, he lost to Tanner Boser. He also got knocked out by Tanner Boser. Yeah, at heavyweight. At light heavyweight, he fought Marcin Prachnio his last time out. I didn't think he looked great, but he didn't look bad. And the version that beat Marcin Prachnio on that night beats OSP here. I'm pretty confident in that. I just need him to make the weight look good, not get caught by that early shot, and then out-volume him. So I will take Lins, but, do you love it? Minus 200? Definitely not. Could you see yourself losing? I could, but what am I supposed to do? Pass on all these chalky spots? Got to bite down at some point.
Yeah, I'll pick Lins as well. I don't love it either. I definitely won't be betting it. He really did lean on the wrestling against Marcin Prachnio last time out, which could get him in a little bit of trouble early, potentially, against OSP. But yeah, I think you really have to see the weigh-ins for both of these guys. You were talking about all of it with both of them kind of going up to heavyweight multiple times. Lins came in, made weight, looked fine against Prachnio, but slowed down a little bit down the stretch. I was on Lins in that spot and definitely was like a little bit nervous. It was not a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, OSP's probably, I just don't see, it's not the same guy that we saw, 5-6 years ago. Like he's slow. He was never really a fast guy. He's slowed down significantly since then. I just don't see too many advantages that he has in this fight. So this may be, the last fight kind of that he has in the UFC. We got Nazim Sadykov taking on Evan Elder, -190 Sadykov, +160 for Elder. What's your thoughts here, bud?
Yeah, well, this is a tough one to get like a real good read on, right? Because I wanted to just hammer old AJ Fletcher. You look at the tape, you see the advantages for Fletcher. I think his wrestling is going to be very effective here. I think his grappling is going to be very effective here. Thing is that his cardio looks to be absolute trash, and that could be a big problem. But I'm like one of these, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt type guys. In his case, all of his wins are in the first round, Christopher Anthony, first round submission. James Freeman, first round submission. Wesley Golden, first round submission. Ariel Juarez, 3-4, first round submission. And then a flying knee on the Contender Series. So it was always going to be a question mark if his cardio is any good. You just didn't know. But it seemed like he's a guy that's come from football background, training with Tim Crater over in Louisiana, Gladiator MMA. He's going to get, good. He's going to pick up some tricks. Same camp that produced Dustin Poirier, same camp that produced Matt Schnell. Like, he will get better in his surroundings, but he was green to the sport of MMA. And with all these first-round finishes, you're winning. What are you going to look like in the second and third round? What are you going to look like when you get chin checked? What are you going to look like when adversity comes your way? So you had him versus Matt Semmelsberger. I had Matt Semmelsberger. I felt like you were a fool. I am going to dance on you here, Paul. He gave him everything he could handle for the first 7-8 minutes. In fact, he could have won that fight. Fletcher could have won that fight. Couple rookie moves. Did definitely gas out. I was puckered up. It was a good underdog shot. The kid looked good in that spot. Now, this is a fight he takes on a week's notice in his UFC debut that went a full 15. Very understandable that you would gas. Totally understand that. So now I actually liked what I saw out of that kid. Even though he lost, I like what I saw out of him. So I bet him in his next fight against Andalusa. And he gassed out the exact same way. He had zero answers for him. Striking, massive disadvantage against Lusa. His wrestling was not good enough to consistently get him going. He wasn't able to press him up against the cage. He has a lot of physical strength, none of which he was able to use. And then he flat out gassed out. So it's like, damn, dude. Cardio didn't improve no bit. Still looked like a one-round guy. It looked worse than he did against Semmelsberger, who's actually a decent fighter. So where's your excuse for him here? It's like, oh, yeah, the car was in Salt Lake City, Utah. It was 1,000 feet in the air. It was at altitude. That's my excuse for him. This guy is better than what you've seen, and now he physically got to go out there and show that. When you look at, he's got a 10-inch reach disadvantage. This Themba Gorimbo has got a 10-inch reach advantage over him. So that's going to pose problems in itself. But when you look at his loss to Henderson Freya, 2 fights back, he can't wrestle, man. He can't wrestle. He's got no game off of his back. Fletcher's going to eat him up. Fletcher's going to see the same thing that anybody that watches tape on him sees, which is you obviously don't want to stay to the outside and strike with him. Close the distance, get a hold of him, peel him to the ground. He's no good off there. They're small. They're fighting in the apex. It's a small cage. It's not like you're going to have all of that space to work with. So at some point, I think Fletcher gets a hold of him. Fletcher's also, explosive. I think he's going to be able to close that distance, catch him with the counter, and then hopefully force the wrestling. But if he just plays it smart, he will have some success standing as well. When you look at other losses of Themba Gorimbo as well, the Dave Mazzani fight, Gino Mazzani's brother, dangerous Dave Mazzani, beat him up pretty good at EFC Africa. Take him to the second round, take him down, beat him up. Lion Merhart, take him to the second round, tire him out, catch him in the guillotine choke. Now you're making your UFC debut. I get that he had a full camp. He was supposed to fight Billy Goff, I want to say. He's supposed to fight Billy Goff on this card. So he's got a full camp, but I think jitters are going to be there. I think that cardio is going to be an issue. I think wrestling is going to be an issue. And even though AJ Fletcher 100% is gas in his last 2 fights, a debut against Semmelsberger, who's a giant at this weight class, giant of a man at this weight class, a debut on short notice, and then fighting Andalusa, who's out of one of the best gyms in the world, a mile high in the air in Utah. Like, I'm willing to give him enough passes. He's young. He would have learned. He would have worked on the cardio. And his wrestling wasn't that effective in his last 2 fights because of good level of talent. I think his wrestling and his grappling is going to look very good here. So, don't love the line, Paul. I really don't like the line at all. But again, I got to bite the bullet in some of these spots. And I feel like AJ Fletcher could come out and look a lot better than he has been showing.
I asked you about Sadykov versus Elder, but we can talk about Fletcher versus Gorimbo.
Oh,
And
okay.
and then we'll go to the next one. It's fine. We'll talk about that other one in a second. But yeah, no, I see a lot of the same things as you. The Themba, Gorimbo versus Dave Mazzani, Gina Mazzani's brother. He gets kind of held up against the cage a whole bunch. He doesn't show the worst takedown defense, but he really, like, anytime he throws strikes, he's got a long reach, don't get me wrong, but this guy is winging punches. Like, it's not long and technical. He doesn't really use that reach all that well. He overextends, and that's, like, he ate, like, I want to say, like, a left hook as he enters, and, like, after whiffing on a punch, just got absolutely deaded. I think somebody with half-decent wrestling, AJ Fletcher played some, college football. Somebody with some half-decent wrestling should be able to take him down at will. And, yeah, the guy just throws absolutely wild strikes. So I was a little bit jarred when I saw AJ Fletcher, a guy I faded against Angelus. Angelus is a guy who trains in Florida with some of the best guys in the world. A very, very skilled technical fighter who had some tough matchups early in his career. That's why I ended up on Angelusa. Themba could potentially land something big, but we've seen AJ Fletcher really take a lot of damage, maybe more than he should have, particularly in that Angelusa fight. But the guy seems super durable. I can't say the same thing about Themba Gorimbo. I actually took the under 2.5 rounds. I took it at minus 135. Market is continuing to move on that. So if you want to get in on the under 2.5 rounds, I would get in pretty early because I think that's going to close closer to like minus 200 based on getting knocked out by Gina Mazzani's brother on the regional scene. Horrible look. Fletcher, if you take out his UFC fights, this guy was a finish guys in the first round type of thing. So I think they're giving you a playable line on this under 2.5 rounds because Fletcher's last two fights have went to decision. But he's been taking on much tougher opposition. Not very impressed with what I've seen from Themba. If he does win, it would probably be, lands a massive shot and AJ's a little bit of damaged goods or something like that. But he's only, 25, 26 years old. I'm sure he's making big improvements. Small cage. It all factors into the under. I'll be picking Fletcher, but my money is on the under 2.5 rounds. Now we got Nazim Sadykov taking on Evan Elder. Minus 190 for Sadykov. Plus 160 for Evan Elder. Let's try this one again.
Do I still get a penny for my thoughts? Was that your line?
Yeah, you can get a penny for your thoughts on this one, buddy.
Yeah, I was looking at the Tapology rundown. They got this as like the second last prelim right after. Because I said earlier that Jim Miller was on the main card. Not even. He's a feature prelim. Oh my god.
Yeah, they shipped up the. I make the graphics and the boards and the rundown, and then they shift them up. But it's like we're dealing with like a card that it's like you could literally put most of these fights in any sort of order and it's all gonna work out the same way.
Yeah. This, like everything else, I don't care for the line. I think that Evan Elder's a lot better than what his UFC debut would have shown because again, he makes his debut on a week's notice up a weight class against Preston Parson. He's fighting him at welterweight. Evan Elder's a striker. Preston Parson's a wrestler. So it's tough to make your debut in a week's notice up a weight class against a bad stylistical clash. So again, what you saw in that fight, I would expect to see a better version of him. He's another guy that's out of Kill Cliff FC, as you mentioned, one of the best gyms in South Florida, one of the best gyms in the world, 25 years old, getting better, making improvements. It's that the UFC did him no favors by signing him. He should have fought LFA. He should have fought on the Contender Series a couple times maybe. He should have kind of gone that slower route and developed himself. Instead, it's like, oh, they need somebody. I got my hand up. You're the guy. You're throttled into that position. But looking at the regional scene, it's like he's fought in a lot of these, the best guy he's fought on the regional scene was 6-6. He hasn't really fought at a very high level. You can watch him. You can watch that his striking looks pretty good. Looks like a decent enough prospect. But what's the level of opposition? How much are they testing him? One thing that I did notice in a lot of his regional show fights and then that UFC debut against Parsons is that he's there to get hit. He gets hit a lot. Like, he doesn't really move all that much. He's not defensively a marvel by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that getting hit is going to get him into troubles against this Nazim Sadykov, who He's got a lot of firepower. He's got more firepower. I think he hits harder. Seems to have 15-minute cardio. And he's just one of these, I bet you he's just one of these strong immigrant mentality type guys that ends up at Serra-Longo in New York. And then it's like, I want to fight pro. Loses his pro debut, okay? And then spent every day in the gym after that and has made massive improvements, because what you see from him from a few years back to now, he's making a lot of improvements. Another guy that has fought relatively low level of competition, hadn't fought anybody really worthwhile. Then you saw him in the Contender Series. Even though the guy was 9-1, that Ahmed Sohaili Hassanzada, he was not good. He was not good. So he smashed him. He made it look pretty effortless. I thought it was a solid performance from him. But it's hard to gauge how good the guy is and then gauge how good the guy could be. What's his trajectory, right? So I'm going to say still very young, 28 years old, out of a fine gym where he's training with Merab Dvalishvili and Aljamain Sterling, Dennis Bazookia. There's a lot of good guys that are coming out of that camp. I think this kid's going to be ready to go. He should have a slight wrestling advantage here in case he needs to rely on it, score a couple takedowns to persuade the judges. I think he should be able to. As far as the striking goes, again, they're both strikers, but I think he's going to have more forward pressure, back him up, land that big shot, more eye-catching shots, and then at the end of the day, he either catches him with something or more than likely mixes in a few takedowns along the way to just secure the decision victory. So I will take Nazim Sadykov. But what you're seeing, there's a repetitive theme on this card. Guys that are struggling to make weight, guys that are fighting for the UFC for the very first time, they're going to have jitters. It's like unproven guys and guys that are over the hill. So where's the trustworthy guy that's going to fight for my dollar and cut off his arm if need be to get me the victory? They're not on this card. Got guys that I don't know if this is for them, and guys that it used to be for them, it's just not no more. What do you trust? I don't know. But Nazim Sadykov is the play.
Yeah, I fully agree. I like Sadykov. I was considering playing him because there was a bit of steam that came in on Evan Elder a little bit earlier in the week. And then now that's kind of like corrected itself. It's moving back towards the minus 200 range. And I think that's probably about right. I'm not willing to really lay the wood too much. I'm not really willing to like parlay him. I don't feel that safe with him, but I didn't think he looked all that bad on Contender Series. I thought he showed some really, really flashy striking techniques and showed a lot of promise. Somebody maybe to have to keep your eye on moving forward, but not someone I'm going to be willing to lay like minus 200 on in their UFC debut. And finally, we've got Clayton Carpenter taking on Joaquimillo Ronderos, minus 300 for Carpenter, plus 250 for Ronderos. I mean, Joaquimillo, yeah, he had a tough debut in the UFC. Comes in like short notice, takes on David Dvorak, gets absolutely starched in the first round. I'm not particularly sure how he ended up in the UFC. The guy hadn't fought since 2019. He was 4-0. I guess it was a win over Eric Shelton, who was somewhat well known in the in the circle. But he had 2 years off, shows up, gets choked in the first round after, on his record, he's got a couple of submission wins. So what exactly is this guy good at? Carpenter, on the other hand, still young, 26 years old. Looked half decent on the Contender Series. I don't really know what to make of this one, Cody. I guess I'm picking Carpenter, but more interested to hear what you have to say on this one.
Yeah, so just like pretty much every fight that we've broken down in this card, one, you don't know how much better Ronderos may have theoretically gotten over the last 2 years. Like, these long layoffs are scary because he's young. He's a young fighter. So 27 years old, you haven't seen him since he's 25. Those 2 years could be crucial. Not only that, but he's full-time in Las Vegas. His entire amateur career is in Las Vegas. His entire pro career, he trains some of the best guys in the world at one of the best gyms in the world. There's no doubt that he's a better version of himself than the last time you saw him. Now, here's the other thing. The last time you saw him, he didn't show anything, right? It's like he just got smoked so quickly by David Dvorak and choked out that you didn't really get to see the full arsenal of his skills. And then now there's a 2-year-long layoff. So that's a big question mark. And then he's the double whammy because, this is the other thing half of these guys got going against them. That fight with David Dvorak, he missed weight. He came in at 128.5. So call it short notice, call it UFC debut, call it what you want to call it. He missed weight the last time you saw him try to make 125. And now he's going to try to make 125 2 years later. He could be filled out. He could be bigger. He hasn't cut weight in a while. So, like, I don't think any of that would really cause you to be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to load up on this guy. It's purely narrative. He could have gotten better, but you got to see weigh-ins. You got to see what he looks like. And I don't know that this is a spot that I necessarily love for him. But with Clayton, the Carpenter, don't want to steal Clay Guida's moniker. Again, he looks like a fine prospect. Young kid on the regional scene, looks solid. As an amateur, unbeaten. Once beaten. He has a split decision loss to Junior Cortez, which is Tracy Cortez's younger brother. So no shame in that one, buddy. And then as a pro, again, looks good, right? I mean, he's kind of cruised out there against lower level of competition, but largely went out there and smashed him. He's out of the MMA lab out of Arizona, one of my favorite gyms personally. The kid can wrestle. You saw him do that against Edgar Chairez his last time out. 3 takedowns, lots of control, good ground and pound. But keep in mind, all of his other fights have been quick routes, right? Like he beats Ronnie Keough in 13 seconds. He beats Nick Clem in 45 seconds. So against Edgar Chairez, who's not special by any stretch, that simple step up in competition, kid was like a minus 275 favorite in that spot, right? Like he won. He looked good, didn't look great. Forced to settle for a decision victory. I think he's got big time wrestling advantage over here. I think he takes down Ronderos. He holds him down. He ground and pounds him. He's got the cardio to win the 15 minutes. But part of me does wonder, flyweights. Ronderos is big. Ronderos trains with a very good gym. Ronderos has been off for 2 years. He's still young. Could this not be a greasy spot? Yeah, it could be. Carpenter, I like him. But has he been tested? No. Does he face adversity? No. Is he just get that quick finish every single time out? No. Maybe he has to settle in for fighting some rounds. And he ain't no David Dvorak, right? So this is a step down in competition for Ronderos. There's just enough question marks that would cause me to have some uncertainty at this line. The line, Paul. The line is just, it's too big. It's out of control, right? And so those are my themes for this card. Weight cut, UFC debuts, and the money lines. The money line is just, if you're a CLV guy and you got them a couple weeks ago or a month ago or whenever it dropped, good on you. A couple little gem spots here and there, but when you record on a Wednesday, and of course this is schedule stuff. We have to record on a Wednesday. I'd love to bring it to you on a Tuesday or something, but scheduling stuff, bring it to you on a Wednesday. And then furthermore, I'm going to release my plays on the Saturday. Like they get steamed, you get chasing, you end up losing money. Like quietly, we've been doing good every week. We haven't got smoked out of the water in no week so far this year. We're going to have to play this show. Obviously, we play every show. But yeah, I don't know that I'm running to the teller to get my money back.
Yeah. I've only got 3 bets this week. I've got the Themba Gorimbo versus AJ Fletcher under 2.5 rounds at minus 135. And that's that's my main play for the night. I did like a half play on Mayra Bueno Silva versus Lina Lansberg. Fight goes to decision at minus 125. And I got a sprinkle on Jim Miller round 2. Just a little Salt Bay. Nothing too crazy. I really don't think I'm going to get too heavily invested in this card because, yeah, there's a lot of question marks top to bottom, and a lot of the underdogs that, usually, me, I like to chase underdogs, but it's like there's good reason why they're underdogs and why you probably don't want to put your hard-earned money on them. Like Jordan Wright, Josh Parisian, these are really sketchy spots. The most tried, tested, and true guy is Jim Miller, but it's like I'm not going to be stunned if he gets knocked out in the first round by a much more athletic Alexander Hernandez. So it's a sketchy card. Mind your P's and Q's. Don't go broke. You can go, you're not going to get rich today. You can go broke today. So mind your P's and Q's, pick your spots, and without further ado, now Cody's going to run through his PRP.
Would be a hell of a hard PRP to hit this week, but
oh yeah.
We're gonna go with Jessica Andrade, Zach Pauga, Jaamal Pogues, Marcin Prachnio, Alex Hernandez, Marina Buena Silva, Nazim Sadykov, Jamall Emmers, Philipe Lins, AJ Fletcher, Clayton Carpenter. Of that list, I think we've got Jamall Emmers is technically an underdog. Marcin Prachnio is technically an underdog. Nah, I thought I had one more. Nah, I guess I don't. All the same, it's not an underdog heavy card. The favorite's been steamed, and none of them really got that big trust factor. This is my biggest concern this week. Okay, again, the PRP, it's a lottery ticket, especially on a card like this. But my top 2 tickets, hell, if I could hit that third ticket, I'm in the money here. but I'm worried about my top 2 tickets. That's what the focus here is. Name me 2 fighters, Paul, that you would feel comfortable parlaying together. Now, I could take the coward's way out, throw Jessica Andrade up there. She's my main event. It would create a head-to-head opportunity. There still is plus money on Blanchfield, and that's probably the smart way to attack it. Who do you put her with? Zach Pauga? Didn't I tell you don't want to top ticket him? I'll play him. He'll probably be on the second ticket given the nature of this card, but I can't top ticket him. Jamall Pogues? God damn. Am I going to top ticket a heavyweight? Bad idea. Maybe second or third ticket, but I wouldn't want him at the top. Prachnio, can't do that. Alex Hernandez at the top. Maria Bueno Silva. I feel like Pat just reached out of the screen and slapped me in the face. You wouldn't put that on your top ticket. Nazim Sadykov. I don't know, man. The 7 Elder is really not that bad. It trains out of a good gym. 25. Jamall Emmers. Smell that shit in your apple pie. Philipe Lins. Oh, man. I would never trust this guy in a million years. AJ Fletcher, gassed out in his last 2 fights, giving a terrible account of himself. Clayton Carpenter. Yeah, fair, but 1, UFC debut. 2, I just told you, minus 300. You don't want to flyweight this kid flyweight action against Ronderos, who has all these decent red flags, like off 2 years, could have gotten better, big for the weight class, might miss weight and, rehydrate quite big. I don't even have a second, and Andrade is not even a lock top ticket.
No.
There's no lock. There's not one single lock. Now you got to get 2 of them to put together for a 2-fight parlay. Well, think about the stretch on putting a 4-fight parlay together. So I can't stress this enough. We're degenerates. You're watching this show, and you're watching at the hour and 10-minute mark on the worst card of the year. You, my friend, are part of the gang, right? We're gang. But this is a bad card. They're just looking to take your money. So maybe bet LFA, maybe bet the PFL card, maybe do some Friday night action stuff just to, to whet your appetite. But the parlays are going to get thrashed this week. I just know it. That being said, I've said that before, and we've done quite well. So I'm hoping it's one of those weekends. We'll throw it up in the universe, positive thinking, and hopefully come out of this one unscathed.
Yeah, I'm going to wait until weigh-ins, but I'm probably going to add Jessica Andrade at this price to my card as well later in the week. We'll see what happens, but that's another spot that I don't really quite understand that line. But yeah, this is the type of card. It's like if you have friends that you've been negating for they've wanted you to come out, but you've been like, man, there's UFC on. It's just like, if your friends ask you to come out and you're like, you can hit the PVR on this. You don't have to stick around and watch UFC Vegas 69. This is the type of card that if you have better plans to do, if you have, you got to take your wife out, or Valentine's Day was yesterday. You were busy working your shift, and Saturday these fights are on. Take your wife out instead of sitting down to these ones. It's gonna be okay. You don't have to watch every little bit of UFC content. I mean, I'm gonna be a sick degenerate and watch every single one of these fights, but I'm just saying the options are out there. This is a decent card to skip all the way together if you have better things to do. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Fair. I will counter with one thing, because at this point, we've already established you're a degenerate. Here's the right thing to do. This is a much better live betting card, because you're going to know way more about these guys that have been on for 3 years once the fight starts. You're gonna absorb way more info. But just like a big basketball, I always notice this on basketball. The game starts, one team's at minus 500. I don't bet basketball. This is what I've noticed. The one team's minus 500, okay? They're going to kill them. But the way basketball starts, it's like the 5-1 underdog comes out and outscores them in the first quarter. That's not unusual in the slightest bit. It's not unusual for the heavy underdog team to come out. It's 8-2 in the first few minutes of the game. Not unusual. Then the line will drop down to all of a sudden this minus 500 team is minus 185, minus 200. And then they'll just go on a roll and just blow them out of the water by 15 points. It's nothing. Because these lines are big, if Carpenter Ronderos starts and Carpenter shoots a takedown and Ronderos stuffs it, right away the line's changing. If Ronderos lands a couple shots, the line's changing. These lines will swing based on this early movement, because it's nobody really knows what to expect. So if you are single guy, have a girlfriend that you let down on Valentine's Day, you're going to watch this card. Yeah, I think pre-fight bets is all fun and good, but I think if you're going to sit down and watch this card, betting it round to round, betting it mid-round, I think that's where you'll find your value.
Hundo P, bro. All right, that is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed this show. For producer Megan and Cody Saftic, I'm Paul Shaughnessy, saying goodbye and good luck.